Alright guys, Scrappy again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Lots of thoughts about the CDL over the last few days, especially coming out of FormaL. The OpTic boys watching some of the Huntsman scrims to some interesting opinions over the last couple of days, but also FormaL giving his thoughts on the way that Thieves are currently playing, especially what Scrappy is up to on the map, saying that the way that he played with the sniper just shows that he's got insane ego in terms of the way that he's channeling, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to start with. Wanted to get into this real quick because the weapon meta, the weapon classes have to some extent changed over time. Just wanted to spend a couple of minutes on this really because with the new update, we have the new maps in play. Standoff is in, Utopia is in, Fate is in, although somewhat controversial. Maybe Utopia could work from a competitive perspective. It's probably not quite 6-star, but it's something they should likely think about. Now, in addition to that, they also brought a load of new guns into the game as well. This is what the pros are currently using. These are some of the ARs, you know, the AR classes, the M15. This is what some of the guys are using. This is the other class that some of the guys are using. So, yeah, I'll just kind of go through this. We've got a Drazah and M15 meta. It's just, you know, the M15, I don't hate it as a weapon. I do think the AR should probably be a little bit slower firing. I think the MCW from Modern Warfare 3 and effectively the MXR in this game might be like just a better AR to have in general from like a feel perspective. But, you know, the M15 is what it is. The Drazah to me is a little bit of a frustrating gun because it kind of feels like an AR. It doesn't have traditional SMG qualities in some respects. So both guns feel kind of similar. Anyway, these are some of the classes the guys are rocking with right now. But again, it is a straight up 2-weapon meta. We've got a Drazah, we've got an M15. Could we see other weapons come into play? Because, look, I know that the pros don't like to do this generally, but it is something to think about. The Maddox is in, as we know. The Maddox could absolutely be used. Right now, it doesn't look like it is going to be. I'm sure that Dashy might well be in favor of doing so. But, yeah, the Maddox is in the game. It's just the M15, because it also fires very quickly, it's not like the traditional ARs we've had, as I say, something like the MCW, even the MXR in this game, or the ICR from back in Black Ops 4. But there is a world, I mean, with this Kogot gun into the game as well, this is a pretty nice SMG. Scump's been using this. You know, I want to say there's a little bit of Sorg vibes going on here, right? So, you know, it's like we've got the Maddox, we've got this Kogot gun, which is kind of like the Sorg, and then, you know, we don't really have an ICR in the same way, but we definitely have we have ARs that are not too dissimilar. There's also an M8 potentially. So, I think there's a better meta for the weapons than we currently have. I don't think we're going to get it, really. Unfortunately, the way that things go, whatever guns that the pros use for the first few weeks, those are the guns that get used for the whole year. Not always the case if a weapon is particularly strong. Right now, it doesn't seem the pros are too frustrated about that. I'm just thinking of, let's say, the Cold War season, when for the first major split, everyone was using the XM4. Before then, they banned it and went to the Krig instead. So, look, I don't know if there's a world where that could happen here, and we get a slightly different meta. But I would be excited to see maybe the Kogot tries, because it feels like an SMG that's more like a traditional SMG, but yeah, as it stands, I'm sure that Treyarch are going to try and find better ways to introduce weapons and help the meta in some respects, but of course that relies on the pros actually using what they put into the game, which is far from guaranteed as it stands. Let's talk about the Falcons, especially as we have this Thieves conversation. Clay did kind of get cooked on the timeline yesterday, unfortunately. I guess Clay's record before he got hired was, or Falcons' record was 0-0 before Clay came in. But Falcons obviously have a lot of work to do. Now, speaking of that though, Pred was grinding, right? Playing some Pro 8s. We see a lot of players getting involved. Interesting, right? Because I looked at Drazah's Twitter because I was thinking, okay, how many 8s is he playing? Right? Usually it's Charles 8 and all of this. He's not tweeted for 8 Drazah in about, I don't know, a week or something, which is pretty rare for him. So, you know, I guess head down for Drazah because obviously he's had a difficult start to the season, focusing on their scrims and their practice probably and all this type of stuff. But Pred was playing some 8s, which is good to see. Obviously, Falcons, they've had a tough start in terms of the teams that they played, but they were getting kind of twerked on. That was certainly the case. We'll see with Scrap here in a second. There's also this clip I'll share at the same time. Zinni with the Huntsman. They were watching some of their scrims. FormaL, Scump, Zinni, trying to help those guys make their improvements. We know that Challenges is an absolute pit this year, more so than ever. There's loads of entertainment down there, as we know. Scump says they've got to be more vocal with one another. They've got to hold each other accountable. They were just silent after that. And Zinni's like, okay, look, I'm going to be on them. I'm going to make sure these guys buck up their ideas and actually become a force in challenges this year.
I feel like they have to be more vocal with each other, though, because, like, obviously we can look at the mini-map and say shit that's going wrong, but I feel like they got to hold each other accountable, too. Like, dude, we didn't talk after that exposure, and they weren't saying shit.
Yep.
Like, they got to be able to be like, yo, like, in this situation right here, you should have done this. Like, they should be able to, like, pinpoint that shit, but they were just silent.
I agree. Don't worry, I'll be on them. Literally all fucking comms, brother. That's like, I think Call of Duty is all comms. Obviously, you can't be getting World Star turned on, but
greedy on the visual.
I like the way Scrap like goes all the way out there like that. Like
on to first blood.
That's how you know his ego's insane. Like when you're a good sniper, like you have to do shit like that.
Yeah.
He gives up his outer. He's like, if he peeks it, fuck it. I already checked it. Let me see who's on the bomb.
Yeah, this is just
like other players are just going to sit there and
just
hold
angle
left.
outer. Yeah.
Hope they don't get bad timing. He's
Yeah,
just
just
like,
wide swings out.
Everyone's got to rotate back, but now you're completely out of the play in a man-down situation.
This is a very tough retake.
This was an interesting series against the Falcons because Game 1, and to be fair, Game 4, were pretty competitive, right? Falcons put up a very good fight against Thieves in the respawns anyway. The first map of the series, Falcons won on the Scar, but then they go to a map 2 Den, and Thieves just absolutely destroy them in a clean 6-0. And it's just like, when you win map 1 against Thieves, and then you get 6-0'd like that, then it's like, well, you're probably not going to win the series from there, right? So clearly there's a lot to be worked on, but I think it's interesting that they lost the first map, right? And the way that Scrap is challing these angles is he chals, right? With the intention that if he chals, if he swings wide, and there's somebody there, they are going to get the first shots off on Scrap, but he backs himself to hit the shot before they get the kill. Of course, if he misses, then he dies for sure with this type of approach. But, you know, that's the way that he plays. And I think it's pretty interesting that FormaL pointed this out, because I don't think many other players would have mentioned this, but FormaL knows all about this type of activity because he's talked about it before. So he talks about liking the way that Scrap's kind of ego channeling with the sniper, being very aggressive with it, taking the wide peaks, putting himself out there, especially because they just lost the first map. They're up 1-0 here against the Falcons on Game 2. Yes, they would go on to 6-0 and win the rest of the series 3-1, but they weren't necessarily to know that at the time. So that chat, especially at the end, you might say is, if there was somebody there, not optimal. But he says that's how you know his ego is insane as a player. When you just snipe, you've got to do stuff like that when you wide swing. Now, FormaL was used to talk about stories like this when he was in his prime. I mean, you know, still FormaL even today, if he was really committed, he could still be a relevant player. Certainly, we know that has been the case in Halo, but back in Infinite Warfare, Black Ops 3, Advanced Warfare, like when FormaL was really the absolute top dog, the most feared AR, really Infinite Warfare, I think, especially to a certain extent, FormaL used to talk about how he would take chals with the AR deliberately away from the head glitch just to get into the head of the other guy. So he would set up in a position where he knew the other team's AR was going to square up to that head glitch, and he was on his own head glitch, and they would just, you know, have the first fight of the game, which is often the case with the two ARs going toe-to-toe right at the start of the map. But FormaL in many of those instances would deliberately stand next to the truck, or deliberately stand next to the pillar or whatever the bit of concrete is that's going to cover up most of his body, and then he'd rip them off the heady anyway. He wouldn't do it always, but occasionally he would do this. I think maps like Frost, if I seem to remember correctly from Infinite Warfare, he used to do, there was a couple of head glitches where he would often sometimes like to do this. And it just showed the other guy who then lost the gunfight was like, damn, like, did he do that deliberately? Did he stand off the heady just to effectively ego me and show that he's better? Which, of course, he was. But FormaL did it deliberately just to get into the head of the other guy, right? Like, logic would suggest you should never do this, right? Just go on the head glitch, it improves your chances to win the gunfight. But FormaL was saying, well, my chances to win the gunfight are good anyway because I'm that guy, and I'm going to check the other guy out to get in his head and just show that I'm better, because he knows he would never do that, right? So that's like kind of FormaL's logic on this. So I think that, yeah, he might be saying, look, Scrap's got a crazy ego as a player, which I'm sure is true, but also FormaL, I think, treats that with some level of respect, right, that other players might not necessarily, because that's also to a certain degree how FormaL used to play. So, look, obviously pride comes before a fall, or whatever they say. So we'll see how it goes up for Scrap this season, but he has every right to be confident in his own gameplay. He is, and has been for a little bit of time, the regular season demon, right? Like, the results in the regular season, pretty damn good. The results at Champs so far in Scrap's career have not necessarily gone to plan. So true to your thoughts in the comments, couple of things after the first weekends. These are the kill records. Now, yes, Kremp had 50 plus in that Colossus game, but it was that online pre-season tournament. So in the CDL, the record currently is Afro against G2 on Scar Hardpoint. He had 44 in Search and Destroy with Sin 13. These will likely get broken in the relatively near future. Mercules had a 1.8 against the Falcons. The biggest hardpoint win is 250 to 85 so far. So, that will, I'm sure, change over time as well. So these will get broken. Probably a couple of them will happen this weekend. Obviously, some of them will happen for the rest of the season. Of course, we've already had 6-0. We've already had an 8-0 in Overload. They could change the Overload rules, so there's no mercy rules. So potentially we could get even worse than 8-0, but I'm not sure that's a massive priority as it stands. And speaking of OpTic, because, look, Thieves, Scrap, they might be very confident in their gameplay this season, but OpTic, of course, as we know, are the team to beat. And yeah, they've got 11 wins on the bounce now. Since the start of the World Championship, they've gone 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 5-3, 3-0, 3-0, 3-1, 3-2, 4-0 in the finals of EWC, and in BO7 3-0, 3-1 so far. So I'm excited to see how much they can continue this, I suppose, whether this counts as like a win. I mean, obviously it is a win streak, but the point is, I guess, over 2 different seasons, but it is the same roster, so there is that for sure. But 11 series on the bounce since effectively Mercules has joined the team, and their next series is going to be against Heretics, which of course last year and even the year before with that Florida Mutineers, Heretics, whatever, Miami franchise has caused a couple of problems for OpTic in the past, but maybe Heretics not the same team that they were last season. These are the games of the weekend. We'll talk about these more in the coming days for sure, but very much enjoyed your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Same story with all of the Halo players I know who come to Call of Duty. Pardon my language, folks. But
Dude, is Dan Ghosty eating French fries mid-series?
I'm telling you.
I'm a monster.
Yo, what the hell?
Telling you, I don't like this.
Lqgend can get that leveled up as fast as possible.
Dylan's using a razor. Dan's eating
He's
French
fucking
fries.
eating French fries. Like,
Honestly, is that like kind of a...
Looking like second
They're called
nature
French
to him
fries.
as well.
Do you think the Gentlemaids are making him eat French fries?
Yeah. Now you mentioned, I think they are.
Where do they play out of?
Really something to look into there. Ah, they're here.
Here? Oh, nice.
I don't know where they are.
No, you should have. No, don't get the ball. Don't get him. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Where is he going? Where is this guy going?